In a fast-paced FPS, your player is going to be moving around pretty much constantly. Whether you want your game to have complex movement or not, it's important that the movement that is available is well refined, which might actually sound silly coming from someone whose game's movement is crap. Okay, so for those who don't know, my name's Connor and I'm the indie dev behind Wraith. After taking a break from working on the game to study for exams, which is freaking traumatic, I decided to try out Ultra Kill because supposedly it was very similar to the type of game that I was trying to make. I played it, had a lot of fun, and realized that my game's movement is trash. It always feels either really slow or unresponsive. Hold on, let me elaborate. When playtesting, I got quite a bit of feedback that the movement was very slow, which is true if you don't use the sliding mechanic. So the sliding mechanic gives you a huge speed increase and removes almost all ground and air friction, which allows you to get around super fast. But while you're sliding, especially because of how fast you go, it's extremely hard to control yourself, so you end up constantly bumping into walls, which is super frustrating. So basically you have the option between moving quickly by sliding or having control over your movement by walking. But ideally, it should be possible to have both at the same time, both speed and control. So first I made it so that you could walk forward quicker than you could right or left, removing the slowness of walking. Then I greatly increased the air and ground friction when sliding to disincentivize overusing it. Or no, wait, Then I greatly increased air and ground friction when sliding to disincentivize overusing it. So now you can still choose between whether you want more speed or more control, but you don't need to pick between one or the other. I'm also finding myself constantly wanting to like bounce or climb up these walls to gain high ground. So let's add wall bouncing. Okay, I don't want to bore you, but basically all this does is seizes something is in front of the player, and if there is, launches in the opposite direction calculated by the surface's normal. Originally, I tried to have the wall bounce preserve some of your original velocity, but this made for super messy code and was just an awkward game feel. But it's still really hard to time the wall jump. I go to press space and I always either press it too early or too late. I think this is because once you get too close to the wall, especially because the wall doesn't have any texture on it, your eyes aren't able to identify your movement. Here's what I mean. Take a look at these two frames. Can you tell which one comes first? Yeah, this one. Now take a look at these two. It's harder to tell, isn't it? So the easy solution is to add textures to the wall. Okay, we're done. That looks like crap. Okay, I added a grid pattern instead, thinking that it would fit the pattern on the floor tiles, but this looks exactly like the default level prototyping grid. It might just be me, but I think that this looks way too unprofessional. I have one more idea though. Okay, now everything looks normal, right? Wrong! Come near and you'll see the grid appear.
Oh, stop ruining my video, I'm trying to record!
I actually really like this result. It lets us keep the smooth textures while also allowing us to gauge how close we are to a wall. It also makes going down these tunnels feel super fast. Okay, now the game works better on a mechanical level, but let's make it feel better too. So right now, although the movement makes sense, with the gun just staying in the same spot on the screen and a hovering camera, it still looks and feels very awkward. Let's start by adding camera movement. With the use of lerps and timelines, let's have the camera move up and down as the player walks, to give the feeling that the player is actually taking steps and not just floating. Something else we can have the camera do is tilt right and left as the player moves to the right and left. Well, that was way too intense. Let's also make the gun move around. Weapon sway is when a gun gets left behind when the camera moves. With a bit of math, this really helps get rid of that awkward stiffness that was there by default. You can give more weapon sway to the heavier weapons to accentuate their weight. I also made the gun move around when you're sitting idle and when you're running, kind of like an animation. I'm actually super surprised at how well it turned out, given that all I'm doing is just moving the gun around completely randomly. It doesn't look AAA, but fun fact, I'm not AAA. I'm a solo idiot doing his best to pull this game together. Just deal with it. Having the gun move around randomly is, unlike a lot of things I had to code, a lot easier than it looks. So I'm actually going to try to explain it. If you don't understand, don't worry. It's probably not because you're dumb or anything. It's likely because I didn't explain it well. Anyway, here we go. This is called a print function. I can type whatever I want into here, and when I play the game, whatever I type shows up on the top left of the screen. This will be important. We'll be using this to have the game tell us what's going on. Alright, and this is what we can use to change the location of the gun. Anything I type into here, when I play the game, is where the gun will end up relative to its original location. So if we plug in 0, it stays at its original location. I can give something super big on that Y to make it go super far away. So if we plug in time, for example, when we play the game, we will see the gun slowly move away. Time represents the amount of seconds that have passed since we pressed play. So when I press play, time will be 0. Because I've bound the gun's location to time, that would mean that the gun's location would be 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and 0 on the Z axis, aka its default location. But as time goes on, so does the X, Y, and Z, causing the gun to run away from us. We can also multiply time by a certain number to make the gun move away faster. This will be important later. If you don't really understand how this works, it's okay. Just know that multiplying time makes things move faster. Now let's see what happens if we plug in random. That would work, right? After all, we want the gun to move around randomly. Well, as you can see, the problem with that is that the gun does not move from one point to the other smoothly. It just jitters around. Perlin noise is a method of creating smooth and natural looking randomness. Games often use it for procedural generated terrain, but it will also work perfectly for moving our guns around. This is what the Perlin node looks like. I'll plug it into the X, Y, and Z of our gun. But as you can see, the Perlin node also needs something to be plugged into itself. Take another look at this image. White represents 1 and black represents -1. The input of the Perlin node is basically lets us specify where on this image we would like to retrieve a value from. So if we retrieve a value from here, we're going to be getting 1, from here -1. So the goal is going to be to take any point on this image and just move around it really slowly. Kind of like how we were slowly moving the gun at first. I wonder what node does that. We can plug in the time node into these Perlin nodes to slowly move this image around as time goes on, just like how we first moved our gun. And here you can see that this results in our gun moving around a little bit. There's still one problem though. If we plug the resulting location into our print, we can see that the X, Y, and Z are always the exact same number, no matter what. Now there might be a better way to solve this, but I just had the computer generate 3 random numbers at the start of the game and use them to offset time. So now each Perlin node has a different input going into it, meaning that they will get a different output and we won't have the same number for X, Y, and Z. This is the end result. We can make it go faster by multiplying time, like how we first made the gun go faster. We can also multiply each of the outputs of the Perlin node to exaggerate the movement. Also really quickly, here's what a select node looks like. Basically, I can put a number in A and a number in B, and then I can check whether I want to use A or B. So for example, this is what it would look like if I plug 10 into A, 20 into B, and say use A, plug that into print. Now you'll see the result 10 is showing up at the top left of the screen. So I can use a bunch of these to basically pick different numbers to multiply time by and the Perlin outputs by, to create different gun movement depending on whether we're running or walking or crouching. I'm not going to explain how the interp node works, but basically we can use this to make extra sure the gun moves smoothly. Okay, I hope I didn't lose anybody. It would be really helpful if you guys could tell me in the comment section whether you understood or not. That way I know whether to try to do this again or not. Alright, so far we've made sure that the player can see and feel their actions, but we also need them to be able to hear their actions. I think that the games floor and my bathroom floor feel like they're made of a very similar material. So I ran my mic from my computer to the bathroom and started just walking around in circles until I had enough clean footstep sounds to place into the game. Now if I just play a random one of these footstep sounds, whenever the camera starts its up and down animation, we get this result. For sliding around, I first tried to record my wallet sliding against the floor, but I'll let you see for yourself how that went. Bro, cat, get out of here, dude. No. Get out of here.
Now what are you doing?
Leave me alone.
Are you yelling at us later?
No, at the cat. Leave me alone.
Why do you have a microphone? You're embarrassed.
Mind your own business.
You attacked the cat with a microphone?
Mind your own business. Thank you. I ended up just recording my mouse wheel spinning really fast and then took out the higher frequencies. Okay, with all this new movement, we need a way to teach it to the player. I already have it at tutorial level, but it's really shitty. I'm using the same system which gives the player their mission to teach the player the game. Problem is that usually these instructions disappear before the player actually has a chance to read them. Sometimes the players don't even notice that the text is there at all. There's also this super weird part. I was thinking that the player would have to jump over this and then get stuck and realize that they need to crouch. It kind of works, I guess, but it's super awkward. So let's start by moving the tutorial to the side of the screen and then putting a dark box behind it to make the white text pop out. Then we can activate this tutorial when the player enters a box and deactivate it when the player leaves. Then place this box in front of an obstacle that requires the player to use the same mechanic that is being explained to them. For example, here's a box that's going to tell the player that they need to crouch, and then a little obstacle that they will need to get past by crouching. I also placed the controls that you'll be using on the ground and made them light up blue when it was time for the player to use them. Finally, I added some videos below the tutorial to serve as extra help for those who've never played a movement FPS before. While I was at it, inspired by Ultra Kill's secrets, I hid a couple of secrets amongst the tutorial and a couple other levels. I also gave them a super satisfying sound when you open them. This was done by reversing the sound of a wine glass being hit by a butter knife. And a couple of chords of a Reese I made in FL Studio. Alright, with that, I feel like the movement feels a lot better. It's still hard to know because I'm used to my own movement, so it's probably what will happen is when I give the game over to someone else, they'll be super confused and lost and feel like it feels like crap. So now the next step is to refine the game a little bit more, and then I'm gonna try to get it to more playtesters to see what people think. And yeah, if you at all enjoyed this video and thinks that the game's interesting, it would be super helpful if you could wishlist the game on Steam. You usually need about 10,000 wishlists before your game releases in order to kind of secure a spot on Steam's front page. Right now I have 200, so it's not looking good. I really want to release this game before I go to college. Any money that it would bring would be super helpful, so yeah, every wishlist counts. I would really appreciate it. So for those who are wondering what's going to happen next, in other words, what the next video is going to be about, I'm creating a system where at the end of every level, you'll get to pick between one of 3 upgrades or bonuses or whatever. So like it might be a grenade, or it could be the ability to see enemies through walls, or like a grace period where if your health drops below 0, instead of dying right away, you'll be given like 5 seconds to kill an enemy to gain your health back. So a bunch of abilities, a lot of these have already been made. Now I'm just making sure that the UI and system that will handle equipping them is robust, as well as the actual system that will allow you to require new abilities.